Hi, this is the Drupal Usability meeting for 16th of October 2018, and we plan to continue looking at designs for highly destructive and less destructive operations in confirmation forms. And that's issue 2773205. I haven't been able to get up to speed on the progress since last week, so if somebody can summarize, that would be nice.
I think Jacob added some comments a couple of days ago, and I added some just shortly before this meeting. Jacob suggested using the standard notice warning error classification with the standard colors and icons and so forth. So a notice for something minimally destructive, a warning for a major deletion, and an error for something that's blocked that you can't delete without first doing some other operation. He also suggested a few things that should be displayed. What is being deleted, the primary thing being deleted, what else will have to be deleted because of it, and then some sort of confirmation. And then there was also 3 levels of the confirmation, although it looked to me as though that didn't quite match up with the previous classification. But for something minimally destructive, just a button, confirmation button. For something highly destructive, a checkbox and then the button. For something completely destructive, and that's the thing that I don't think really fits the previous classification, but for that, a text field where you have to type in something like the word delete before you can click the continue button. I went through the screenshots and listed some of the common elements that I saw in each of them. Only 1 or 2 had some additional form elements. When deleting an image style or a user account, there are choices you have to make. What will replace the thing being deleted? And I think just one, when uninstalling a module, there was an additional prompt directly above the confirm and cancel buttons, but just about all of them had a title. Typically it's a question, are you sure you want to remove such and such? There's a message, which is often just saying this action cannot be undone. And those are present in almost all of them, and then the confirm and cancel buttons at the bottom. And then often, especially when there's associated configuration that will have to be deleted, there's a list of the items that will be deleted. I also added a comment, but haven't yet updated the issue summary based on the discussion we had last week. And I think that's about all the progress we've made.
Yeah,
Jacob,
you're pretty thorough there. I think you covered almost everything. And the inventory is really helpful that you added on 34, where, you know, those nuances where we have, you know, like select list, what are we replacing something with? That's like, I kind of missed that. It's like a, I don't know, it's what's next step, you know, forms, like what's going to what action do you want to happen after you've clicked confirm?
Oh, and there's also one other thing I noted, and I don't remember how to reproduce this, but it fits in with the blocked possibility. There's some cases where you actually have to follow a link or more links to delete the related entities. You can't delete this until you delete all entities of type and I forget what type it was, but they provided some links to delete other things before you could delete the thing you planned to delete.
I think that's nodes. I thought content types would do that. Maybe not. Yeah.
It was some less common entity type where I saw it come up.
Oh yeah. Oh, you know what it is? Content types have a blocked. I'm looking at a screenshot where it's like, are you sure you want to delete the content type? It just says article is used by 6 pieces of content. You can't do it. You may not remove article until you've removed all of the article content. Oh, they link off? Yeah, I've never seen that with a dialogue, like a confirmation where it's like, go here for next. My take on this is a lot of work. I mean, we come up with the pattern, and then how we integrate it into course seems like a whole other challenge onto itself on where to start from.
Well, we had a discussion last week about that seemed to make sense, where we provide the pattern and we provide the class, but then each of the instances where they're using the present UI, we would just go to them and see if they were interested in making the change, rather than this group being responsible for going out and making all of the changes to core.
Okay. I mean, I kind of agree with that. I mean, of course, I look at everything from the web form perspective, and one of my thoughts is for me to go and apply a prototype of this to web form just to see how it works. Because also I'm using dialogues for confirmations when I can. Like when there's a link that says delete, I try to open a dialogue because it's a much cleaner UX. And I could do that pattern and try to create that base class, and then take that base class and move it into, put a patch onto core. Where I mean, I think it's important if we want to push different sections of core to use, we got to pick one. As long as we're okay with this notion that we would gradually roll it out, it'd be worth picking one section of core to apply the pattern to, like taxonomy.
I definitely would like to see it in taxonomy personally.
That seems like the highest priority. That's the one which has the most destructive stuff that people accidentally delete, right? That's where we're at with that.
And just reading the issue title, come up with a design for, there are a few stages. First is designing it. Second, if it's something that can't be handled by the standard confirm form base, then produce some other base class. But that already might be a separate issue, or could be a part of this issue. But then using that new base class would certainly be out of scope for this issue.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I throw out a base class is then we can get a little more, like I am for, if we're deleting something that deletes configuration, showing the configuration, but not the way it is now where we're like showing the name of the config file and it's kind of overwhelming, but to have like a details element that slides out and says, this configuration is being deleted. And I mean, one thing also, if you show the configuration that's being deleted, you can also link to it and explain to someone what that means when you say configurations being deleted. Because the ironic part, I just throw out there, the ironic part about a block being deleted and the configuration associated with the block, that can be undone if you back up your configuration. Like certain, so it's not, I don't know, I'm trying to balance the best of both worlds.
Right. Every site I manage certainly has the configuration under version control. So saying that it can't be undone is sort of short-sighted, perhaps. But Jake, what do you mean when you say you do it in a dialogue? Is a dialogue the same thing as a confirmation form in a modal, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a confirmation form in a modal with just some AJAX helpers to handle the canceling. Because instead of cancel, redirect into a page, it closes the dialog. So there's a helper there. But it's not doing much more than that when it's in the modal. One problem is status messages do not display in modal dialogue. So you have to kind of do a hacker. That's where we start having to extend the normal confirmation form. Because you got to get those AJAX callbacks working with it. I mean, that's my thought is I can handle it. I can do a prototype, like not design, but just get the elements starting to flesh out. Because I think the key thing that's really missing is there really should be a warning at every one of these delete. There should be a warning at the top, like an info or a warning or an error when someone's going to delete anything on the site, so that they kind of understand that they're on a slightly different form and the behavior is destructive at different levels. I mean, that's my take on it.
So I think I think that's true. I agree with you, but I think that might be out of scope for this issue, since this issue deals with highly destructive confirmation, and now you're suggesting, and again, I agree that we update the standard confirmation form and add a notice to it.
Yeah, that's, and if we start going in the direction of like creating a new base form for this. No, I agree. Yeah, the message, you're right. If we don't do if we say we don't want to display a warning message or an info message, like where it's a blue box at the top, then we could not adjust certain forms.
It makes sense to remain focused on highly destructive and to come up with the pattern. And then when it's done and it's been successfully implemented and people like it, then you can go back and compare and say, well, how can we do this in the limited case of the very basic non-highly destructive deletes?
Yeah, I agree. Focusing on the destructive operations. I just know what, like, if I was doing the work and going through, I would scan all my confirm forms within the module and then apply the pattern to all, that would be the workflow. And if the workflow is simply that someone needs to take their existing confirm form that's not highly destructive and apply this base class and set a warning message, it might not be that much work. I mean, let's focus on the highly destructive and get that working first. Like, okay, sorry, I went in circles.
But yeah, it's also nice to remember your scope and actually finish one thing before changing everything else.
I'm also interested in, when we go through all of this, we may decide that what's been developed for the highly destructive use case, actually the very limited, like focused deletes can use that same class with a particular configuration. Because I still would like to have some ability where you have the class able to take from a given external module a list of things that are being deleted. Because the big complaint as a site builder that I have is I'll get this list of all of these configurations that are changing or being deleted, and it'll say, oh, these things are being deleted, but it doesn't actually tell you that you're also losing content. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing where I want to be able to say, okay, contrib module or core module X, when you're doing this thing and you're making use of this UI, you can also provide us with a list of things that are being deleted so that someone can see that if they want. And rather than making it required, it's an optional thing that we can at least process and make visible, because it accounts for all the use cases where that is already going on.
Yeah, I mean, the config is very easy, because we know when you're deleting something that has config related to it, there's usually not more than 20 configuration files. I mean, that's extreme, but 20 configuration files. When it gets to content, I don't know if, you can't really show all. Well, are there any well, see, that's the problem. Are there any operations that you go to delete let's say we deleted a vocabulary. It deletes all the terms associated with that vocabulary and all the relationships.
At very least, you could say that we're deleting 200 terms. Mm-hmm. And some information is better than nothing from a site builder perspective. So often there's these things that are going on that are highly opaque. And if you don't have code or you don't have something contrib that can step in and make it less opaque, you're stuck guessing. And then as a support support person, what that results in is some panicked developer calls in and says, I've deleted a whole bunch of stuff and I don't know what I just deleted. Give me a copy of my database.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Well, that's like, I mean, going from the web form perspective, like I want to fix, when you delete a web form, it should say the number of submissions, the configuration file, and I happen to track relationships, and that's pushing module developers to track relationships. So it's definitely possible. Like the example with the vocabulary is you can look up every entity reference field and every entity reference that references that vocabulary, because it's going to be broken. Like that just, if someone deletes a vocabulary and there's entity references pointing to that, they just stop working completely.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
And kind of, to get those relationships out to people can really help them understand what's going on. Also, once you build those relationships, it just helps.
So to keep it scoped, I'm not suggesting that we build all of those lists and everything just to make certain within the design pattern there's some way to accept a list that someone else determines how they want to provide it, so that when you're going through the modal dialogue for deleting this highly destructive thing, we can say, oh yeah, tell us something that you want to append or make available that is a list of things that's happened.
What's being deleted? Like I almost want to come up with the vocabulary that we want to use and say something like, what is being deleted? And every confirmation dialogue that is deleting something should say that exactly. And below, like I had this vision where it's a details element, because then if it's a details element, we could put a lot of information in it and decide whether it's open or closed.
So in some cases, if you're deleting a vocabulary, you might be deleting hundreds or thousands of terms. And I think that we should be willing to settle for a count of the terms that are deleted and a link to the page showing them.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. Like you can accept a count, or if it's something that's even bigger than a particular count, you at least allow it to say that this is in excess of some max value. And again, like all of those delete, the delete functionality is happening elsewhere. We're just providing the ability for some sort of communication going on where external module X, the vocabulary says, hey, we're going to have to batch this because we're deleting 200,000 terms. And that's going to, because I don't know what's happening systematically outside of the UI. I just know that there's things that we do sometimes, and then people get very confused because it takes hours for whatever action you've just taken to complete. And none of that is indicated in the warning, which just says you may delete something that is going to do all this stuff. There's not enough information to make an intelligent decision to say yes to.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I forgot about that batch processing. The duration, warning if it's batch processing.
Yeah.
No grants does that. That could take forever. Or yes, search indexing.
So I just want the ability, not that we figure out how to solve those problems. Keep it scoped, but just make certain within what we're doing, we allow something else to tell us, and then we can present it, as you're saying, in details or however else, but it's something that we can do in a controlled fashion.
Do we want to, like, okay, with batch processing, we should warn them on the duration, how long it's going to take. Should we, like for vocabulary, we would say you're going to delete 500 terms. Should we be linking to those terms in the highly destructive behavior so that someone can jump over and check them?
I don't know. I don't know if we actually are doing that so much as we're allowing the taxonomy module maintainer to determine what they want to present us with, and we can give them constraints around what we're willing to accept.
Yeah,
or I think the design should recommend it, but I think that we can't implement it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I understand that, but a recommendation: do we have links in confirmation dialogues? You know, to the content to show the content that's being deleted.
I would rather have an exportable, like the option to, you've got 200 links or whatever. Would you like to save this as a text file or something? Like, I don't know if you want to show, because so frequently you've got large numbers that we're dealing with, and the interface, it's not conducive to managing large numbers. And that's why I think earlier on you mentioned the interface for config files. Well, it's never going to be more than 20, so it works in that context. But for these other things, it would be better to just have something that says, okay, I can create a text file that you can download to your machine, or you can download through the web, your web connection, etc. But something that gives you an option to get the inventory, but doesn't necessarily print it to the screen. It doesn't take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But your option to back up is an interesting one.
And this is blue sky when I'm talking now. I realize that this may not be physically possible.
Yeah, I think for a vocabulary, just a link to the page listing the terms in that vocabulary is good enough. I don't think we need to come up with sort of batch download as part of this issue.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I'm not saying batch download. I was just saying if someone wanted to provide a list, we'd say they can save it to a file, and then you'll get a list of node IDs or links, and it would give you a link to every term that was being deleted. But I wouldn't print it to a screen, and that's blue sky.
Mm.
So I think we generally agree that there should be a status message, and for highly destructive, I think there's some agreement that it should be a warning message. There has to be some information about what is being deleted, and these are elements that are already there in the examples. So Jacob, you were talking about the relationships. Is that something specific that you mean, or is that just?
I mean, I think it's just this notion that what is being deleted encompasses config, content, and relationships. Relationships being if you have an entity and it has references to it.
Okay, what else might a relationship be?
Well, let's think. If you're deleting a role, you're affecting a bunch of users. You know, that's a relationship. This role will, deleting this role will impact, 50 users. And that's not, you're not deleting those users, you're impacting, their access.
In Drupal 7, there was the ability in the old days to, or actually it may still exist in Drupal 7 today, but you could, when a user was deleted or removed, you could delete all of their content.
Yeah, that's very complex dialogue. We have a screenshot of that. That's the most complex confirmation dialogue. It's like multi-parts.
Yeah, it also happens to be one of the most common use cases for when we run into customers that are really unhappy because they've deleted something and they want to get it back. It seems to be a very common, like a very, very common mistake that site builders or content editors make.
That they cancel a user account?
No, not that they cancel the user account, but they cancel the user account and then choose to make a bulk change to content that's destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't know how to get out of the hole they dig themselves into by doing that.
Deleting a field will affect all the content types that use that field and any views that use that field. Is that what you're thinking of as a relationship?
Yeah. If you delete it, and any reference is the one that comes to mind the most. Fields would affect things. I mean, image styles is a weird one because if you're using an image style in a field formatter, it's going to, and this is where the maintainers of those modules, the style module would have to make a decision on what the warning is. Because I think if you delete an image style and there's a field formatter, it goes to the default image style or something. I'm not totally sure what happens.
Having just reviewed your screenshots, I can tell you that when you delete an image style, you're given a select list, and you can choose a replacement style for everything that currently uses the one you're deleting.
And they're just not telling you what is being affected by that replacement style.
That's true.
That's why I looked at that screenshot and didn't understand it. And what's cool, they have that information. If they're doing that action where they're doing that replacement and going through all the fields and updating it, then they do have that information. They know what's going to be replaced before someone hits. Yeah.
A lot of these patterns would also be of interest to the VBO module, because there's a lot of highly destructive actions that you can do with VBO.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do we have? We have the status message, what's being deleted. And I do think we want to think about the confirmation process. Like a very simple, this is the simplest approach to making someone confirm a highly destructive behavior is to have a checkbox to say, please confirm. And until they check that checkbox, the actual delete button or the continue button is disabled. And that's a double confirm. That's a very low fidelity approach to it. That's the simplest one. Having people type delete into a text field is, I don't think, appropriate in most spaces in core, maybe except for deleting a user with a lot of content.
It sounds like the options to change that action would be a good thing for contrib space, and using the simplest method would make sense. Just make certain that it's well documented how someone else could replace it.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff, both of the patterns, the checkbox disabling, the required checkbox disabling the delete button is a very easy pattern, and even the text field where you have to type any string, it even would support multilingual, is also an easy pattern to support because it's all built into Form API. You can specify this text field must contain only this pattern.
So what do you think of the existing pattern that the title of the form is typically a fairly long question? Are you sure that you want to remove such and such? Whereas the one place that had the pattern I preferred is uninstalling a module, where the title is very short, confirm uninstall. And then the question appears as a prompt above the buttons. So I like that pattern, even though it's only used once. What do you think?
I do too. I'm sorry. By the way, I have guys working on my house, so I'm getting distracted from multiple places. I like a shorter title. It's better for mobile too. That's definitely.
Especially since in the 7 theme, at least, the title is this black on gray. So there's less contrast there, although it is a larger font. But there is less color contrast than there is in other parts of the form.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think having a very simple title that's very predictable, like delete title, and then the warning, or remove title, or unsubscribe, or it helps a lot. Action, just the action and the entity as the title, and then always to push them to have a message, because that, I think, it would also make it look The other approach is you have that long title. Are you sure you want to delete this? And then it says this the most typical one is they say this can't be undone. That happens a lot in core.
Yeah, that must be the default somewhere.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it must be.
Another example we should look at is the screenshot in comment 12, I think, which is what the migrate team came up with. This does have a warning message at the top, which I think is something we've agreed upon. It has this funky, really, really long text on the button, which I guess would be replaced perhaps by the text next to the checkbox that Jacob has proposed. And when you select that checkbox, the confirm button is enabled. And of course, it has a message and a list of stuff that will be deleted. So I think something fairly close to that is reasonable design, just changing that long text on a button to a checkbox, a prompt next to the checkbox, and a simple label on the button.
Does it make sense to make it something that can be configured elsewhere to go into an unsafe mode, so that if people don't want to have to check the box every time? I think the checkbox is a best practice, but do we want to give people the ability to revert to the old way of things if they choose to just not implement that, make it optional?
I don't think we want to give people that much flexibility. I think we want a design that will be implemented consistently.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
And someone will write a module for that.
Yes,
that is true.
It'll be the disable the checkbox, confirm checkbox module, and they'll move on. Write a patch. Yeah, I like the migrate modules, the whole thing, everything that they have there. They're giving, even the description, you know, it's basically telling someone you need to read this. There's a warning, there's text, and then there's details. And I like this. If we get the checkbox and we give some good recommendations, then the buttons can get a lot simpler, because then we could give recommendations of continue, delete, replace, cancel. Oh, well, yeah, that's a weird one. Cancel. I was thinking for canceling an account, but you can't really have a cancel account and a cancel button.
Like I'm sure I've seen somewhere recently. Are you sure you want to cancel? And then 2 checkboxes, yes and cancel, or something like that. Canceling the cancel is always a problem.
So what are the next steps?
It would be nice to mock up a design. Christina, any interest? and I think that I think that basing it on the screenshot in 12 is not a bad place to start, and to start coming up with the recommendations of the things that we can't totally specify.
Sorry, I haven't got all the changes that need to be done, so I will review the recording because I'm still a little bit lost. So I can try it if I follow what you've said.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Benji, can you do a summary? Or I mean, I have just a few notes. I mean, I think focusing on that screenshot, what's that, number 14, seems like the best starting point. Like, yeah, I agree. It's just like that, and if we add a checkbox to that.
So if I follow you, mainly the change will be to keep the text that is on the screenshot, but then remove the text from the super huge long main button and place that into a checkbox. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, no problem.
And I suppose you have some design choices on how you'd want to highlight that that checkbox. Do we have to worry at this point about whether JavaScript is enabled and whether we can enable or disable the button based on the state of the checkbox? I guess the form API has the states.
Yeah, we can do it because if you make the checkbox required, then that handles the fact that if JavaScript's not working, they still can't submit the form. You know, like if JavaScript's off and the checkbox is required and they click submit, it will throw a validation error. It won't allow them to continue. And that kind of handles it if JavaScript's disabled. From a UX, we're just adding a little states logic in the front. If they check, the button would be disabled via JavaScript. So if they check the box, we would enable the button. And cancel wouldn't be affected at all. I think we have a disabled state in the 7 theme.
I think so, yeah.
But for the primary, yeah, I hope for the primary, yeah. Even then, it's still better because they can't click through if they don't check the box.
Yeah, definitely. If we show disabled, it will make more sense.
Okay, I've been taking notes as we go, so I'll update as soon as we're done with another comment. And then I guess we need someone to do a mock-up, and I guess Jacob, if you want to start in the context of the web form module, if you want to start implementing a base class that has these elements, that would be really nice.
Yeah, it's worth it for me to do it because I actually was looking through my code and it's kind of like it's the same thing that we're seeing everywhere else. It's a little all over the place. Yeah, I can try to get that done the next week or two. Like I'm basically going to start where we are, and I'm hoping to do it in a way where it'll show how we could do this in other modules in core, where it's like get the inventory, the screenshots, walk through, you know, and then clean up the destructive behaviors. Okay. I'll create a ticket and I'll add a reference to this one. I'll definitely get that done in the next week. And then maybe at Bad Camp, I'll actually find time to do the work.
Oh, I'll see you there.
Cool.
So, anything else, or I move we might end the meeting early?
Not for me. I don't have anything.
Nothing from me.
Nothing for me.
All right. In that case, we can end the meeting early. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Have a nice week.
Take care all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.